Hi, this is Joe Montana.
This is Dak Prescott.
Hey, this is Jason Kelsey, and you're listening to Rob Maaddi.
Rob Maaddi.
Rob Maaddi.
I am Rob Maaddi, and welcome to the AP Pro Football Podcast. The NFL free agency frenzy has begun, and my colleague Barry Wilner joins me to discuss the first couple days. Also, stay tuned for a very special interview with agent Andre Odom, who is going to detail his incredible journey to the NFL and representing some of the best players in the league. We're going to kick it off first, talking free agency with AP Pro Football Writer and Pro Football Hall of Fame voter Barry Wilner. Barry, free agency kicked off this week. The biggest surprise to me was Bill Belichick spending like he's never spent money before in free agency. Started off with tight ends Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, and then continued from there. What did you think of what Belichick did, really going against his usual style of free agency, and how much this could help the Patriots?
Rob, this reminded me of somebody who is playing Monopoly and is buying up everything on the board that he can grab, but also knowing that Boardwalk and Park Place are already in Tampa Bay. I think that I think there's some desperation here.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is he's admitting that he had really messed up the roster over the last 2 years, because Brady might have stayed had Belichick paid attention to the rest of the roster before that. So I think what's happened here is he's added some good players. This is going to be a better team than it was last year if Cam Newton has anything left. But having said that, I don't see that the Patriots have made themselves a really dynamic team like they've been in the past. And I frankly don't see that happening again unless they get a quarterback who's a lot better than what we saw from Newton.
What do you expect out of Cam Newton? I was a little surprised that they gave him, and essentially it's a one-year deal, and they brought in some veteran receivers, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, the tight ends that I just talked about. So they're surrounding him with more weapons. Is there any hope that maybe a second year in the system, healthier now, maybe a couple years removed from all the injury issues he had, that Cam can get back to what he was? Or do you think this is simply a quarterback on a decline and maybe a placeholder for somebody they get in the draft?
I think he's definitely a placeholder. Having said that, I do think that it's not a system thing. I think they're going to change the system a little bit for Cam, at least in this upcoming year. This could be the type of team that could really work well with play action. Got a good running attack, although you have to wonder about their offensive line, as they've let two of their mainstays go and three of their starters may be gone by next week. You have to wonder about that offensive line's ability to protect. But I think that what we're going to see is whether he has anything left. And I think health is a part of it for sure. I don't think he was fully healthy this past season, but I also think he was never really comfortable there. And the Patriots, to me, are now a team that's chasing. And Belichick has realized that, and that's one reason he went, some people think overboard, I don't, in free agency. They had all this money to spend. And remember, he has not had really good drafts very recently either.
When you look around and evaluate some of the other teams and what they've done, does anybody stick out to you as an early free agency winner or early free agency loser? And we're only a few days in.
Tampa Bay, obviously, is the biggest winner. Mm-hmm. Keeping that gang together, that is so hard to do after you win a Super Bowl. You saw that in Philadelphia with the Eagles. We've seen it with so many teams. So there's a team right there that did everything that it really needed to do in free agency by keeping key people, and may still keep some more key people because Fournette is still out there. And Ndamukong Suh, I think, is going to stay, is still out there. So you have to put Tampa Bay at the top of the list. I look at what the Jaguars have done, and I found it fascinating because Urban Meyer, he had all this money to spend, and he spent it on kind of second-level guys the way Belichick would always do. But Urban Meyer doesn't have a system in place yet where guys will fit that system. I don't know how he can be sure that the guys that he's bringing in can fit what he wants to do. He did bring in some guys he's familiar with, from the college ranks. So Jacksonville's going to kind of be an interesting team to take a look at and what they do. No team really jumped out at me with what went on, mainly because this is not a real A plus or even an A group of free agents. This is a nice group, but there weren't a lot of difference makers in this group.
You mentioned Urban Meyer. Do you think that was strategy in him going after second-tier free agents, or was it him misreading either the market, trying to go after other guys and not being able to sell it because it is Jacksonville and they have a losing history, or him thinking it's similar to college where he's got the name recognition and he can just attract guys that way?
I think it's all those things. And we'll find out this year. They have to be better. There's no question they'll be better. First of all, how much worse can you be than 1-15? And secondly, they're going to have a quarterback that I think they can rely on. And he has made them better with some of the people he brought in. He held over some players who didn't do a whole lot, but not a lot, not too many of them. But I don't know that he misread what he could do in free agency. But I just don't think that he has the feel for it yet that so many other general managers and coaches who've been in the league a while would have. They're going to be a real interesting team to see how they do, how they fare, and not just because they have Trevor Lawrence, but because they got Urban Meyer coaching there. I
thought what the Carolina Panthers were able to do in getting Hassan Reddick, who was a big-time addition at pass rush for them off the edge. He had 12.5 sacks last year, 4-6 fumbles, and they got him at a pretty reasonable number at $8 million. I thought that was a pretty good deal. How much can he help that defense, a guy of his caliber? I know he had a lot of those sacks. Would he have 5 or 6 in one game? But he still had a really good season.
He finally was put in the right position at outside linebacker. Arizona had moved him around. He had been mostly playing on the inside. There was even, some talk of making him into a safety. And he now has found they have found the right spot for him. And I think Carolina's going to be a good place for him for 2 reasons. Number one, he knows Matt Rule. He went to Temple, so Matt Rule was the coach. So there's a familiarity there, and Rule knows what Reddick can do best. Secondly, they have Brian Burns, who had a terrific year last year on a really bad team. So that team's going to have a nice pass rush between the two of them. And you're right, Carolina got him for what is a very reasonable price.
A move that might signal the end of Larry Fitzgerald's tenure in Arizona. And we don't know if Larry Fitzgerald yet, as of now, hasn't announced whether he's going to retire or come back. But A.J. Green going from a veteran wide receiver from Cincinnati to Arizona would seem that the Cardinals are shutting the door on Larry Fitzgerald, who is a franchise icon. Do you view it that way? Do you think Larry Fitzgerald will stay and play another season? And if so, where can a guy like him end up?
I don't think they would ever close the door on Larry Fitz. If he's going to come back, it'll be in Arizona.
Really? Despite that, A.J. Green, Barry?
Yeah, if he comes back, I think that he will stay there, yes. And I think that I don't think that their talents are exactly the same, and I also think for the leadership that Larry Fitzgerald brings, that I just don't see him playing anywhere else. But it's very possible that the Cardinals already know that Fitz has decided that he's not coming back, and so they plugged in that number 2 receiver with A.J. Green, who's had trouble staying healthy and is a bit of a risk. But they're not, it's a 1-year deal and they're not paying him ridiculous amount.
Well, a guy who did get a ridiculous amount is 8-time Pro Bowl left tackle Trent Williams, who even at age 32 was able to get the richest contract ever for an offensive lineman. San Fran gives him a 6-year, $138, and the numbers I saw, $55 million guaranteed, $30 million signing bonus. That's a lot of money for a guy who is on the other side of 30. What did you think of that move?
Well, part of that has to do with leadership. They love Trent Williams in San Francisco. And before he had his issues with the Washington football team, he was an incredibly popular and good leader in Washington. So I think that had a little bit to do with the numbers. He was going to get a really good offer no matter where he went, because offensive tackles like that can play into their late 30s. Look at Andrew Whitworth in Los Angeles. That guy's been at the top of the list, and he's, I think, 38 or 39. And so I think Williams has 4 or 5 good years left in him. I have no problem as long as the 49ers had that kind of money they could spend. And it looks like they're going to stick with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's got a left tackle now he can rely on.
And surprisingly, I think to both of us, neither one of us really expected Russell Wilson to get traded. But it appears that the conversation Seattle had with Chicago may have been a little more serious than we would have anticipated. Ultimately, Seattle said, no, they're not going to. Pete Carroll's not going to rebuild at age 69. And the Bears went out and signed Andy Dalton. Do you think those were real, legitimate conversations and Seattle would have actually considered it if the price was right, the cost was there for them, or it was just a matter of two guys being in Fargo, North Dakota, sitting down, watching Trey Lance work out and then having a conversation?
I think the price can always be right for almost any player, but that price is incredibly high. Kind of like what Mike Ditka once did when he traded his entire draft for one player. And I think that had the Seahawks been willing to part with Russell Wilson, it would have required the kind of compensation that would have set the Bears back for enough years that Wilson would never have gotten anything accomplished in Chicago. So I don't think it was that serious, and I do think they talked, and I think that the Seahawks talked to some other teams as well, just to see what's out there in the waters. But I think now the chore for Seattle, it's very clear. Build something around Russell Wilson. This is a guy like Aaron Rodgers who can carry a team, but get him enough material around him to get him back to another Super Bowl, just like with Aaron Rodgers.
The trades were official, the ones we've known about for a month now with quarterbacks. Of course, Jared Goff goes to the Lions for Matthew Stafford, and there's a lot of picks involved in that deal. Carson Wentz goes to Indianapolis from Philly. He finally got an opportunity to speak to the media in Indy. Of those 3 quarterbacks who switched teams, Wentz, Goff, Stafford, who do you think has the most immediate success?
Oh, that would be Stafford. He's going to the best team, and he's also going to a place where if Stafford can stay healthy, he could be very productive. Rams have a solid offensive line. They've got some good receivers. We have to see if Cooper Kupp, how healthy he's going to be, but they've got good receivers, they have good tight end, and of course they have that terrific defense. And there are people who believe that Goff was the main thing holding them back from being a Super Bowl team. So let's see. I think Goff is going to have the toughest time, and I just don't understand why Detroit would turn its back on Kenny Golladay and bring in Goff and not have a number 1 receiver for him.
It's going to be interesting to see where Kenny Golladay ends up in the next day or so. I know the Giants are in on him. The Bengals are in on him, which would be a great pickup for Joe Burrow. Do you have any feeling one way or another? And why do you think the wide receiver market hasn't played out? I just don't see that many wide receivers out there who are worthy of big-time contracts.
No, there aren't. But Golladay and Allen Robinson were the 2, and Robinson, of course, was franchised. And I think Golladay is going to get himself a nice deal somewhere. You don't get a chance at too many number 1 receivers. The guys we're seeing moving around among receivers are Emanuel Sanders, who to me is a terrific guy to have on your team, but he's not a number 1 receiver. A.J. Green no longer is a number 1 receiver. Curtis Samuel, those are the kind of guys we're seeing move around. And wherever Golladay winds up, I think he's going to be in a good situation, and I think his quarterback is going to have a big smile on his face.
Barry, it's been fun, but we'll catch up next week.
You bet, Rob. Thanks.
Andre Odom grew up in Philadelphia. He played college football, worked in an NFL front office, and has been an agent for 6 years. He represents two players who were projected to be top 10 picks in this year's draft, Florida tight end Kyle Pitts and Penn State linebacker Micah Parsons, plus several others. His story, however, to get to this point is an amazing one. Here is my conversation with Andre Odom.
Andre, tell me about you got a unique path, man, to becoming an NFL agent, worked in sales at a radio station, then you were a branch manager at a bank, a grad assistant football coach at Temple, which is you and I both are alma mater. I went there to grad school. Then you were in scouting for the Chicago Bears, and here you are at Athletes First doing amazing things as an NFL agent. Explain the road to get to this point and all those steps along the way, how they prepared you.
It was an obstacle for sure, man. Definitely an obstacle course of many trials and tribulations. But, you know, I have a mantra that I live by, and it's literally one day at a time, right? So I literally just took my entire, my path, my career, just took it one day at a time and just focused and controlled what exactly that I could focus and control, all that. So, I mean, it was a grind. Obviously, it wasn't easy, sleepless nights, 17, 18 hours in the office as a GA, obviously going to the NFL, and working in the front office, having those long, tiring days and not seeing your family. It was definitely a journey of tremendous grind, but it was more than worth it. And as you alluded to, me starting out, in the sales business for 90, it was 94.1 at the time, WIP, here in Philadelphia. And, that right there was a transition out of college that I made. And it really helped groom me for, the business that I'm in now, because I'm ultimately dealing with people, building relationships, sustaining relationships, nurturing, fertilizing relationships on a daily basis. And, I'm of the mindset that you don't just show up. These things are built over time. You have to do it authentically, and genuinely. So that's kind of how I got here, man. And that's been my mantra from day one, and I'll continuously live by that. I'm blessed and highly favored for sure, man.
I love that. When did you realize during this journey that you wanted to pursue a career as an agent? Because you had that scouting experience with the Chicago Bears and working in a front office. It could be, very rewarding, but at the same time, a lot of hours, a lot of time away from home, all that stuff. So when did you realize, you know what, I want to pursue being an agent? Yeah.
So when I got fired from the Chicago Bears, the NFL obviously stands for not for long, and that's not just for players. That's for coaches, front office executives, everyone. So when we got let go from there, my family and I had a couple of opportunities to actually go back. And, the boss lady was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. We just bought a house and we just got settled, back on the East Coast. So I did media for a while, right? I was with Anthony Gargano and Brian Baldinger and those guys for a while doing that. And then one day it just settled on me. I had an epiphany, and I was like, listen, I grew up in sports, boxing, basketball, football my entire life. I've always been around, those individuals. A lot of my best friends made it to become professional football players, the Jamil McClains of the world, the Jari Evans of the world, people like that, and guys in boxing like the Danny Gar. Like, I grew up around these guys. So I've always been around, and I've always been there to help and, be a resource and a tool for those guys, whether it be for their camps and things of that nature. So I said, you know what, man, I feel like I have a lot to offer in that segmentation of the business. I've been blessed to be at every single level of the business to this point in my career. Why not take that leap of faith? Why not just try it out? I've done everything else. I might as well try it, because I believe I really could be, a real resource, a real asset, to a lot of these young men, because, I truly believe in, based on historical data and what we continuously see from these guys and their futures, a lot of them, need those individuals to, help walk them down this road, right, through this journey, because this is a very, very, tough business. And it's a tough life being a professional athlete. It's not easy. Everything's not going to be, perfect sunny days, right? You're going to have those rainy days. You're going to have those painful days when things don't go well. So who's going to be with you? Who's going to help educate you? Who's going to truly be fully invested in your future? not just your success contractually, but individually, emotionally, mentally, things of that nature. So I just felt like me personally, I had a lot to offer. So I wanted to try it out. If I make it, great, which I knew I was going to make it, honestly. But if I didn't, at least I tried it. The worst shot is the shot that you don't take, right? And I've always been a person to take every single shot. Whatever I want to do, I'm going to do. It's just that simple.
Can't score if you don't shoot, right? I think Wayne Gretzky said that one time.
He did.
Andre, there's a negative connotation to agents sometimes. And I think people maybe think Jerry Maguire. You go back to that movie, Show Me the Money, like, oh, man, it's been like 20 years or whatever it's been.
1 hour.
How do you feel about that perception, that the negative connotation, and how do you set yourself apart?
That's a tremendous question right there, because that was actually the reason why I never delved into the representation business from the beginning, because of that dark cloud that was attached to it. And I alluded to this in one of my other conversations, that growing up and being hands-on with these athletes, people kind of looked at me as a street agent, as they say, right? And I worked with coaches that would attribute those individuals as street agents, and not for nothing, a lot of those individuals are really good people, and those athletes need those people, because where we're from, I come from extreme circumstances, as you know. We don't have parents. I didn't have a mom or dad to hold my hand and walk me through, right? And a lot of these kids don't. A lot of these young men don't. So, I didn't want to be an agent initially because of that. And I think it's a very unfair stigma that's attached to being an agent, because if you're doing it from the right place in your heart, in the right place spiritually and mentally, you're going to really help these guys become who they want to become. You're going to help them through this tough journey that is almost seemingly never ending, right? Because someone's always grabbing at you. Someone always wants something. Your phone's always ringing. But what they don't tell them is that when your career is over, when the celebrity dwindles, when that phone stops ringing, no one cares. Who's going to be there for you then? Who's going to be taking your calls then? Who's going to help you walk down that path to the next portion of your life? Because when a lot of these young men retire, they're still babies. 32 to 35 years old, you're a baby.
You mentioned those extreme circumstances that you grew up in. Now, I was born and raised in South Philly. You were on the other side of Philly, in North Philly, raised by your grandma, didn't have a mom and dad at home. You had a tough path, so you could have gone down the wrong road. Who helped you along the way make those right decisions?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I would say I was blessed to have that skill set at a young age of being a great decision maker. That's what I would say from the offset. But when it comes to, having that person to kind of educate me and give me information that I didn't have or that I couldn't retrieve on my own, my high school coach, Ron Cohen, hands down. He was that resource, that asset for me that really helped educate me, right? And helped me see the other side of the world that I didn't see. Coming from where I come from, all I saw was, violence, crime, drugs, whether it's from, with all due respect, my family, friends, circle of influence, to the individuals in my neighborhood. That's all I knew. That's all I saw. So as you said, I mean, I could have easily went that way, but, I made a conscious decision at a young age that I didn't want to go down that road. I didn't want to be in the projects. I didn't want to be in the hood for the rest of my life. So it was up to me and only me to truly figure out what it was that I wanted to do, what my genius level talent was, and actually master it and go after it with full all out intensity.
You don't come from a background of like a law degree, working in your way up that way. I mean, you actually played football.
Yeah.
And you walked on at Temple after playing at Bloomsburg. So how much do you think that helps you with players, prospective clients, the fact that you played the game? Does that give you a little bit of more credibility with them?
Yeah, in some instances, yes. But I would say what gives me the most credibility is that I actually worked in the front office. I've been in those boardrooms, all right? I understand that language. I've been around those conversations. I've been a part of those conversations. And the fact that I actually had the opportunity of coaching for a couple of years at our alma mater at Temple as a graduate assistant. Like that right there, it was just, it was a trampoline for my career. It literally was, because, when you have a chance to acquire that much information and build your resume that way, that's that's pretty incomparable, to some individuals, to some families, and, to some of these young men. So they look at it and they say, man, he did that. I could do that. I need to be affiliated with someone that's, taking that path. Everyone can't be a player. That's the reality of it, right? Like, we're all not blessed, to be, these elite level athletes, myself included. So, just figuring out a way to maximize your talent level and your skill set, right? And really, transition it into your level of success, whatever that may be.
As a young guy in the business, as an agent, how much, you got to be on that road, recruiting, talking to guys, the pro days, all the combine this year, obviously, because of COVID, everything is different. How tough is that road, man? Like, how difficult are those challenges? And you've done well. We'll talk about some of the guys that you're going to represent, 2 potential top 10 picks and other first rounders. But to get here, to get to that point, how tough was that?
It was very tough. I can't really sit here and act as if it wasn't. It was very tough because my journey wasn't a traditional one. As you said, I didn't have the red carpet laid out for me. I had to really go out there and, earn everything from the muscle, as we say, right, from ground zero. So it was very tough. I can't sit here and, pretend that it wasn't. But at the end of the day, I embraced it. And that's what makes me, that's what really distinguishes me, I believe, from a lot of people. Because I knew it was going to be like that. My entire life was like that. I never had anything easy. Nothing was ever handed or given to me on a silver platter. That's just not what I come from, right? So everything I wanted, I knew at a young age that I had to go out there and take. So this was going to be no different. I had to really set my mind to it. And once I established that this is what I want to do, and that this was my genius level talent of building and sustaining meaningful relationships with people, I just went after it. And that's really what it is. So yeah, it was tough. But again, being able to, differentiate exactly what's it going to take to really accomplish your goals and be able to go out there and execute at the highest level, that's where I got my happiness from, right? Because, we're all going to work at something, that's just the reality of it, right? So you can either give it your all doing something you don't want to do, or you can go out there and sacrifice everything for something that you really, really want. So that's what I chose to do.
You and I have talked about different things along the road in regards to race relations and how some things have unfolded in the world and how the NFL has handled it and being a Black agent, which is obviously underrepresented, right, in the NFL.
100%.
Do you anticipate in your role trying to go out there and eventually, as you settle in and you get more established and you grow into the business of guys looking at you as a role model and saying, hey, maybe I can't play the sport. Maybe I don't have that talent, those blessings, those gifts, those abilities, but I can be involved in sports this way like Andre is.
Yeah, that's obviously my ultimate goal, because for me growing up in North Philadelphia, I didn't have that. I didn't see that. I didn't think there were Black agents, right? That's part of the reason. It's like 50% of the reason outside of the other 50% that I named earlier that I didn't want to become an agent. I didn't think it was for me. So for me to be in this position right now, I owe that to the next generation. First and foremost to my children, right? Then secondly, to the younger generation that's coming up behind me. So that's why I always take the initiative to go out there and share information, with the younger kids and, whether it be male, female, because at the end of the day, if this is what you want to do, you can do it. You just got to really set your mind to it and go out there. And again, that key word is execute, right? So it's very important for me to do it at a level that other people can look at and say, you know what, that guy right there, he made it happen and he did it the right way, right? I can do it. I can do it as very much possible. So it's very important for me, and I'm going to continue to do what I've been doing. And I don't make a lot of noise doing it, but it's getting done for sure behind closed doors.
What do you enjoy the most about working for Athletes First?
Just the family environment. I come from a place, my background where I came from prior, being at Athletes First, the dynamic is completely family oriented, right? We have a mantra that we work and live by over there. It's called family ties. When you see me post, you'll see me always, put that as a hashtag because we really live that, and more importantly than me saying it, our little brothers, they say it for us too. I mean, because it's directly impacting and affecting them, so the family dynamic that we have there amongst, our players, all being together, hanging out, training together, checking on each other, sharing information, right? Because we're in a business where everyone's competing, right? And everyone wants to be the best as they should. But the difference is there comes a time where, you want your circle of influence if you're smart. And so much love, respect, and adoration for David Mulugeta, the president, of Team Sports at Athletes First, because he set the standard prior to me, getting there. And that was the reason really why I chose to go to Athletes First, because I love the dynamic there, just all of our guys being together, even amongst the, the agents, like sharing information, working together. Hey, if I can't get this young man, let's work it together, right? Or maybe I'll have some information about the young man and his family. I'll disseminate that information to you and things of that nature. It's just a different kind of energy over there. So that's what I like the best, just being completely transparent.
How much do you guys love this week when NFL free agency period kicks off? Obviously, this year is a little bit different. Salary cap it decreased because of lost revenue last year, but still money's flying around. What is that free agency frenzy like? And when you guys can just sit down and negotiate a contract for a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah, you depicted it perfectly. It's a frenzy, right? Like everyone's trying to go after the best players that fit their culture from a team perspective. And then from our perspective, it's making sure not just going after the big dollars, but making sure that our players are going to the right places, right? To the right team, the right individuals that are going to put them in a position to be successful, right? What their skill sets are, making sure it aligns with what the team is bringing to the table as well. So, the energy of free agency is certainly a different feel because, these guys have worked their behinds off. And, not for nothing, as you know, a lot of guys, unfortunately, don't make it to that next contract, that second contract. So if you're blessed to be able to get to that second contract, it's very exciting. It could be a little nerve-wracking at times too. But when you have that relationship with your players and when your players believe in you, and you have that family dynamic, they know that you're not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize their future, right? Their contractual value, to that sense. So, just having that continuity together, man, and having those guys believe in you makes the world of a difference because, at the end of the day, it is a business, right? And like anything else, there's ups and downs, and there can be detrimental situations that can happen. But again, if you have that relationship, keyword relationship with your players, those guys believe in you. Our guys just love to just go and just do what we do because they know if you owe us $10, you're definitely not giving us $9. It's just that simple, so, and that's the way we operate, and our players love us for that. And well, that's one of the reasons why they love us. And that's how we approach it. So
we see a lot of teams restructuring contracts to get under the salary cap this time of year. Sometimes people don't understand that, and they go, well, why would a player be so willing to restructure a contract? But correct me if I'm wrong, when you're restructuring a deal, that player is going to get more money up front or maybe more guaranteed money. So a guy is not going to want to do that to accommodate a team unless it's beneficial for them, correct?
Absolutely. It's just like you working at not you per se, but an individual working at their job, and you're on an annual salary, and your boss comes to you and says, you know what? I know you're on a 150 annual salary. Let me restructure your deal. I'll give you 50 up front, right? So we can make sure that on the back end, we'll have more money to allocate to other individuals. Are you going to say yay or nay? You know what I mean? You're going to take that 50K up front because tomorrow's not promised. Anything can happen. And it's the same thing as restructuring a deal in the NFL. If it makes sense for the player, you take advantage of that for sure. And yeah, you're doing the team a favor, but again, it's about relationships, right? You take care of them on the back end, when the time comes, they'll take care of you as well. And you have to have that dynamic and that relationship with teams as well. And as teams want it with you too, being the agent, for your players and future clients as well. So, it's a very interesting business, but it comes with a lot of different nuances and elements, but once you get acclimated to it, you'll understand it a whole lot more. And I know I just bloviated a little bit, but I'm really, really a nerd when it comes to this stuff because, I mean, this is what I love to do. This is what I've invested my entire life into doing.
Andre, your first client, who was it, and that feeling when you secured that first player?
First one ever? Doesn't matter which agency?
No.
First client ever was Robbie Anderson.
Okay.
Temple University.
Wow.
The old agency that I was with prior to where I am now, having acquired him and helping him, improve and upgrade his current scenario, his current situation, representation wise, was probably the best feeling I've ever had because Robbie was a young man that, and I don't like talking about players that I don't represent anymore, but Robbie was a young man that I coached at Temple. So our relationship was so pure. It was so genuine. It was so natural, because we went from, me making sure he's at class, while I'm doing class checks as a GA, to seeing him graduate, and then become this ultimate big play wide receiver in the National Football League and having an opportunity for him to say, you know what, I have this much trust, love, and respect for you, to allow you the opportunity and bless you with the opportunity to, represent my future. That was such a magnificent feeling. It was truly amazing, and I will always think and be truly grateful for all the guys that gave me an opportunity, whether I currently represent them or not, because again, as you know, this is a tough business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly difficult to sign these young men. But it's even more challenging to build relationships with them, right? You have so many good agents in this business, right? You have so many agents in general coming at you, pulling at you, tugging at you, calling you, doing whatever it takes. And, for you to win that kind of battle, you can't take that lightly because it's not guaranteed.
Well, this year's upcoming draft, you've already secured, and I mentioned earlier, 2 very likely top 10 picks. Kyle Pitts, tight end out of Florida, and Micah Parsons, linebacker out of Penn State. You also have several other guys. I know you're going to be hanging out in Syracuse. Andre Cisco's there. You got Jason Owa from Penn State, Mark Webb. Man, first talk to me a little bit, Andre, about Micah Parsons and Kyle Pitts. I don't know if there's another agent right now. I haven't done the math and looked at it, who's got 2 potential top 10 clients. That's a huge deal. How exciting is that, and how good can these guys be?
Yeah, I haven't really had the chance to get too excited because there's still so much to do before all that transpires. And we always do our best to, stay level-headed. It doesn't matter how much success you acquire. It can always be taken away from you. And you know that, right? We've both been through challenging professional experiences. So, I always just do my best to just stay level-headed and stay humble. But, looking at it when you say it that way, looking at it is pretty exciting. But I'm more so excited for the young guys because they've sacrificed their lives for this. Knowing Kyle Pitts coming from Philadelphia, the experience that he went through, having, coaches tell him that he wasn't going to be good enough, and he wasn't going to make it, and maybe he should think about trying a different sport or whatever it was, to seeing him get to the position he is in life right now professionally. It's amazing. It's exhilarating, right? I'm just completely elated for him and for Micah. And Micah's Micah's a young man. He's not a kid. He's a young man that has worked his behind off tirelessly. He sacrificed his life for this. He's been through a lot. Micah Parsons wasn't always a 5-star blue chip athlete, right? He wasn't always, that person that everyone looks to as the top alpha dog, the leader of your room, your team. He wasn't always that guy. He had a lot of challenges growing up. He came from extreme circumstances and a desolated environment by the way. So, seeing him, elevate his life to the position he is in right now, that's just God right there, because you don't make it from where we come from. And that's the reality of it. So, seeing him take this opportunity and truly run into his greatness and work his behind off is truly inspiring, because a lot of people don't understand the work that goes into being a professional athlete. And that transition from college to the pros is by far the hardest transition you'll ever make in your life. So
tell me a little bit about Andre, man. Andre and Jason and Mark.
Jason Owe. What can I say about Jason Owe? He is the epitome of a humble servant. When you hear him talk, you just sit there and you just glow because he's so intuitive. Like he's highly intelligent, but he wants to be great. He's a student of the game. He takes copious notes. He truly wants to master his craft. And being around a young man like Jason, it really helps motivate you to elevate your game as well, because he's going to ask those questions, right? He's going to take those notes and he's going to follow up with you down the line and say, hey, look, hey, bro, what do you think about this? I know we talked about it before. Tell me what your thoughts are on this again. Things like that. So being around those young men, like Jason, it just makes you elevate your game. Mark Webb is another young man from Philadelphia that, watching him grow up and go through his journey from transitioning from wide receiver to now a defensive back. And by the way, one of the top defensive backs in this draft, he just had an incredible pro day yesterday. And you look and you say, man, from our perspective, we knew it. We knew what it was because, we're there through that journey. But then seeing him do that on a national stage and really walk into his greatness, and accept that challenge, because everybody isn't, expecting him to perform at that elite level in which he did. So it's beautiful to see. And Mark is just a tremendous spirit because his energy is unmatchable, right? Like the energy that he brings, I don't care if we're bowling, I don't care if we're just hanging out talking, his energy is consistent. And what he brings to a team is going to be so powerful for that locker room. He's going to make sure that he's the positive energy always. He's going to make sure that everyone else is working. He's going to make sure everyone is in light-spirited moods, but more so focused on the task at hand. That's one of the things that I love about Mark for sure. And last but certainly not least, Andre Cisco, my namesake. That's my guy right there. He's by far one of the most talented individuals I've ever been around. But more importantly, I always say that, God willing, when things go well for him, he stays healthy. Dre's going to be an all-pro because he's already an all-pro individual. Does that make sense? Like
absolutely. Yeah.
Everything Andre Cisco does is at an all-pro level. The way he talks with you, the way he interviews, the way he takes his notes, the way he studies film, handling his business outside of football. Everything is very meticulous with Andre. And that's why he's in a position in life that he's in right now, too. It's not a mistake. It's by design, and when you're surrounded by young men of that caliber, it truly pushes you. It really does, because you have to stay on point, because these guys will hold you accountable. And that's what we invite. That's what we want, here at Athletes First. We want our guys to hold us accountable because we're certainly going to hold them accountable. And when we say family ties, we all stick together. If you come for one, you come for us all.
How challenging has it been not having, this is the first year without the combine. Mm-hmm. So for all the players not to be able to gather there and have the teams, has it been more challenging, or are the players finding that not be doing all their interviews virtually as opposed to all the visits in person? Some guys get tired of going from city to city, right? And it gets by the end, they're dragging. So, has it been more of a challenge, or is there a little welcome factor to it too as well?
Well, these guys are young, right? They haven't been through the experience. So, you don't know what you don't know, right? So they've never been through that experience. So they don't know how taxing it can be to be flying all over the country. But everything has its challenges, like in any business that you experience, right? They have their ups, they have their downs. And some things may be a little more advantageous than others. But for the most part, our guys have been attacking it head on with just a positive attitude, because, again, it's a life-changing experience. And you want to make sure, as we continuously preach to these guys, that you put your best foot forward, right? And that you go at everything at an elite level. You make sure these teams understand that you are, the most competitive, the most focused, the most disciplined individual that there is. And how bad you want this, they'll be able to determine that, based on these conversations. So, our guys have attacked the right way. They've been positive. They've been energetic throughout their meetings. And, it's been great to see.
Well, Andre, appreciate it, brother. And I appreciate you spending some time with me, you talking about your career and your journey and what you intend to do for other people and how you've been doing it along the way, man. So thank you.
I appreciate you, Rob. Ever since we've met, you've been consistent. I think that's one of the main words that I can attribute to you is consistent. You've been nothing but loving, caring, calling, checking in. It's not just a contractual relationship, right? A transactional relationship. you've always been that guy to just reach out, say, yo, hey, buddy, how are you, man? I'm praying for you. I wish you the best. How can I help? So to be here sitting with you right now on this tremendous platform that you're building, man, it's a blessing, man. I don't take it lightly. I appreciate your time, man. I appreciate you thinking of me, seriously.
Time for some final thoughts. A young Eagles fan, his name is Gio, who has overcome various health issues and many surgeries, and he's received a lot of attention on social media in the news for being a huge Carson Wentz fan and meeting Carson, and Carson even called him recently. Well, Gio was bullied on Twitter this week because the Colts sent him a number 2 Carson Wentz jersey, and he proudly displayed it on social media. That bullying was absolutely abhorrent behavior by a few knuckleheads, and it should never be tolerated, and it should never happen anywhere, not on social media, not in real life. And sadly, people forget that human decency matters a whole lot more than fandom. Some people just don't get it, and that's disgusting. That's it for this week's episode. Thank you to Barry Wilner and Andre Odom for joining me. Please take a minute to subscribe to the show on iTunes and wherever you get your podcast. Share, leave a review, tell a friend. Until next week, I'm Rob Maaddi, reminding you, make a difference. Be a blessing.